Hi, Principal Matters listeners. This is Will Parker along with my co host, Jen Schwanke. And before we jump into this week's episode with our special guest, Carlos Johnson, Jen, our question of the week is supported by Summer Pops Math Workbooks. Principles: when students practice math over the summer, math scores go up. So, what's your summer plan for math this year? A great way to start is by ordering your free summer workbook samples at summerpopsworkbooks.com. Reach out to my friend Pete there and get your free sample today. Jen, here's the question. And I know we could do a whole episode on this, but we're just going to do a Q&A on it. And you actually brought this question in. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on icebreakers at staff meetings?
Okay, so you know why I brought this question up is I think this is one of those things. It's like jeans. Should teachers wear jeans? It brings such emotion, and people will fight about this and their beliefs. And what I believe is if let's say we took 10,000 educators and we lined them up elbow to elbow, I think, and we said, do you like icebreakers and why? We would get 10,000 different answers because it depends whether people enjoy them or not. I'm someone that groans and moans when someone says we're going to open with an activity or a game or an icebreaker, and then I love it. I'm like the one that wants to win, and I'm the one grabbing the Sharpie marker that's the best because it does awaken something in me that I enjoy because it brings me closer to the people in the room. But boy, like on social media groups, you will see somebody even say the I word and there will be filled with comments. Don't even do it. Not worth it. We hate them. Just leave us alone. Send us to our classrooms to work. Yikes. So I'm being very careful not to have an opinion about whether principals should do this well. So you tell us what you think.
Okay, before I say what I think, I have to tell a funny story. And this is an adult audience. You can handle it. So I remember my first year as an AP, I was going around meeting all the new staff. And there was this one course that our school offered at the time. I'm not sure if your schools do this, Jen, but we had a junior ROTC program at our school. It was amazing.
Mhm.
But it was
Mhm.
taught by a retired Army colonel who taught this. And so this guy is older. This guy is not your typical educator. And so I'm meeting him at the first time, and he says, "Yeah, I'm enjoying." And I think I asked him the question, "So what's it been like transitioning from the military to working in a school?" And he said, "Well, the first time I'm just gonna say it like he said, first time I went to a teacher meeting, they told us to stand up and get in a circle, and I looked around and said, I am not holding any damn hands."
Right.
And I just burst out laughing because I thought this guy does not like icebreakers. And so let's bring that full circle to your question. What are your thoughts on icebreakers at staff meetings? And I'm just gonna say I'm that person that like when I step in a meeting and they're like, oh, let's do this. At first, I'm always the uncomfortable guy, and then I like it. And so here's Will's caveat. I never think anyone needs to be like committed to you must or must not, but it should have a purpose.
Right.
Like an icebreaker should have a purpose. If it's simply to be silly, I mean, silliness and fun is a purpose of itself. But I would say, I'll give you an example. A lot of times when I'm using an icebreaker in a meeting, it's because there's an underlying reason I want to go there. For instance, I may want someone just to take a quick moment and pair up with someone else or get in a team. Usually for me, it's some way to build some kind of understanding between people that they didn't have before, or maybe discover something about someone they didn't know before, or to raise the energy a little bit in the room because sometimes movement, as you know, for learners can be helpful for them to get those juices flowing. But but I'm a secondary guy too, Jen. So I have to be careful because I know when I'm in meetings with elementary versus secondary people, there is a different level of like enthusiasm and fun and commitment. Elementary people are more fun. I'm just going to say it straight up when it comes to like their willingness to like take risks and do fun things. What do you think?
Okay, but I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to be
Yeah.
hated for it. I hope we don't lose any listeners here joking, but um maybe they're more fun because they do more icebreakers. Is this chicken or egg? Like I do absolutely understand that many people want to get in their rooms and do work, but I wonder if there's an organizational health component where if people can laugh together and get silly together, there might be a benefit. I don't know. I'm just saying. Just asking.
All right. Well, I will say this. If you're interested in doing icebreakers at staff meetings, I'm not going to like recommend a resource, but there's so many things out
Oh
there. All
yeah.
you have to do is a quick Google, and there's so many ways you can kind of filter through things that are like that would make you uncomfortable and find that thing that you think would be fun. Go ahead, Jen.
And what I would say too is you maybe don't call it an icebreaker.
Yeah.
I have a wonderful reflective activity that I've done with rooms of principals before when I'm called to train or work with them, and nobody would know it's an icebreaker until it's over. So maybe be stealthy. Let's ask for a little more stealth.
Well, I said I wasn't going to recommend a resource, but
Oh, here you
I'm gonna
go.
do it. So my friend Jason Jadamski at Ignite to Unite has built his entire work around building spirit among students and teaching staff. And he takes the whole idea of icebreakers to a whole nother level.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, like,
I've
so
seen
he and
it.
you, yeah, we've been in rooms with him together
Yep.
that when we did our conference together. So I would just go to Ignite to Unite. It's the number 2.com and check out Jason's work because you go to a whole nother experience whenever you do the kind of stuff he does because it's not just fun, it's also really meaningful. So there you go, Jen. That's our Q&A
There you go.
for this week. So Principal Matters listeners, as you get ready to listen to this wonderful conversation with Carlos Johnson, thank you for doing what matters, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Principal Matters Podcast, episode 434. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. This week, I'm talking to my special guest, Coach Carlos Johnson, about Power Engage. Coach Carlos is a professional speaker, trainer, author, and educator with a proven track record in transforming school culture. He and his team have successfully turned around 3 public schools and 1 private Christian academy using research-driven strategies that boost parental engagement, enrollment, and student retention nationwide. His core belief is that a highly engaged school culture is the mother of high performance, which led him to develop the Image Culture Transformation System. The system, offered both online and on-site, trains thousands of parents, students, and educators annually on the psychology of engagement. In 2015, as the principal of the Male Leadership Academy, he doubled enrollment, raised staff pay, improved school culture, and enhanced student performance. In response to the school to prison pipeline crisis, he also created Future Man Success Prep, a leadership and behavior course for boys. Coach Carlos's passion for transforming institutions is clear in every training and speech he delivers. He's also the author of Power Engage, 7 Power Moves for Building Strong Relationships to Increase Engagement with Students and Parents from Solution Tree Press. Coach Carlos, welcome to Principal Matters Podcast. Why don't you fill in the gaps in that intro and tell listeners something else they may be surprised to know about you?
Wow, there's so much, but probably the one thing that they don't know is that this was not um, a labor of love. It wasn't. It was born out of pain. Um, I realized that there were some things missing in my journey in education, and had I was looking for a solution for kids who look like me, for kids who had the same background as I did and who had the same journey. There had to be a better way. And so I went on a journey to figure it out. And most of it was reliving some of my history and then looking at the supportive research and then coming up and then working with the schools I was working with. So it's a blend of my personal history, a blend of recent research, and then a blend of just practical application inside the schools we work with.
Well, I would love for you to marry some of the stories of the work that you've done with some of the questions that I want to pick your brain on now that I have you in the room. I've had the pleasure of having a copy of Power Engage, 7 Power Moves for Building Strong Relationships. And I feel like I'm being coached when I read your book. So well done.
Thank you.
Because I can hear your voice all the way through it. I wanted to begin with an image that you share in the book where you talk about the domino effect. Can you explain that and how it has served as a motivation in your work with educators and yourself to engage students?
Sure. I'm a big fan of simplicity. I know that when you work and when you write for Solution Tree and when you do this work, it needs to be scholarly. I get it, and it's important. but I'm also a big fan of simplicity. I'm a big fan of working with school districts and working with teachers and not coming into someone's building and adding a big rock that they have to carry on top of everything else. So what I was looking for was, what could I share with instructional teams, with leaders, that would make their lives easier? And what I came across was a book called The One Thing. And if you've ever heard of Keller Williams' book, The One Thing, it's an amazing read. He's a real estate guy for sure, but his principles in there are business principles that are applicable in any industry. And what he talks about is finding the one thing that sets in play a domino effect. And so he has a question in his book that he asks his salespeople to ask themselves every morning. And he asked himself this: what is the one thing that I can do such that by doing so will make everything else easier or unnecessary? What is the one thing that I can do such that by doing so will make everything else easier or unnecessary? And I gotta tell you, that struck me like, oh my goodness, he's reading my mind. What's the one thing? And that's what teachers are asking for. That's what leaders are asking for. They don't want a coach like myself or a consultant like myself to come in and say, here's a list of 1,000 things. If you do this, you can transform culture. So I built my hat on making things simple. So the domino effect is me helping schools, helping instructional teams put together the integral tasks that are needed to succeed, and then just hitting that one small domino that knocks over everything else.
I love that. Now, I have to admit that I went and looked up a video of the University of Toronto's professor Stephen Morris that you mentioned in the book, because I wanted to see what
Yes,
happens when you line up these dominoes. And he has this
yeah,
domino that's a 5 millimeter. It's the size of a pencil eraser,
that's
and he
right.
lines it up in front of these other dominoes. And at the end, there's one that weighs over 100 pounds, and he just shows how this tiny little domino can
Yeah,
knock over something that big. And then he explains, and you explain this in the book, that if you had extended that to 29,
yeah,
because you're increasing the size for each one, that the
that's
one at
right.
the end would be the size of the Empire State Building.
That's right.
And so I was just blown away when I saw that image, because
Yeah,
it just immediately made me think of that application you gave, which is, okay,
yeah,
those small consistent practices that we do every single day, over time they build momentum and they build action and that
yeah.
consistency. And so the question I hear you asking is, okay, think about, and I'm going to use your word, that
Mhm,
power move. Think about
mhm.
what's that thing you need to be focusing on every
That's
single
right.
day to get the other things moving.
That's right.
And so with that in mind, I just want to, anything you want to say to that before I ask the next question, because I'm sure your mind is spinning too.
Well, just real quick, is that Archimedes kind of gave us a preview into this when he says, just give me a lever and a fulcrum and a place to put it, and I'll move the world. He was talking about, that great mathematician was talking about, what's the small place, the strategic place I can put this at, and I'll move the heavier object, the world. But what do we do in our goodness? We as people, we as leaders, we as teachers, we as superintendents, we as parents, we as kids to move the world. Instead of saying, giving them that small place or that small domino. So that's all I would add to that.
Well, you have a beautiful illustration in the book too of several dominoes lined up, and I'm just going to, since this, many of our listeners won't be able to see this, but you involve things like increased student performance, behavior,
Yeah,
attendance, engagement, relationships,
yeah,
culture. All of those are just such important pieces of what you know creates a flourishing learning environment. You explain also why adapting the mindset of a coach, and you cover lots of other mindsets too, but why is the coach mindset so important to you as a concept for engaging learners?
there are the concept. Um, I pulled out of, again, one of my life experiences.
Mhm.
What I realized in my formative years was, it wasn't the teachers in my school who had the greatest influence in the culture. It was the coaches. The coaches could walk down the hallway, and this is not to take anything away from teachers at all. It was just something unique that coaches had. Whether it was the volleyball coach, the football coach, the track coach, the wrestling coach, those guys and gals could walk down our hallway and everyone would just get it together. And I was like, in my latter years, I didn't ask it as a kid, but in my latter years, I'm like, what did my coach have over me that my teachers didn't? That sometimes even my parents did.
Mhm.
And there were just certain unique characteristics that coaches had. So what I wanted to do was see if I could see if there were instructional teams, individuals who had characteristics that coaches had, track them, and that's what we did with our 36 schools. And what we found is that there were some great similarities that teachers could use that coaches used every day, whether it was intrinsic gifts that coaches had or whether they learned them. But when a instructional coach, when a classroom coach either implements the same strategies or identifies those techniques that they learned in their own childhood, oh my goodness, they're different in the classroom. So what I ask teachers all around the country to be is, don't stop being a teacher, but add to your teaching being a coach. Be a
Mhm.
class, have a classroom coach's mindset. And
Talk a
that's what,
little bit more deeply about what that looks like in practice, Coach
yeah.
Carlos.
Sure. So there were four, what we found is that there were four unique traits that coaches and classroom coaches have. And one is that they have the ability to capture the hearts of students or players. They capture the hearts. Um, the second thing is, for whatever reason, be it a selfish motive to you to win the state title, a selfish motive to be the best class in the building, they believe in the competencies of their athletes or their students.
Mm.
I believe you can make that tackle. I believe you can make that shot. I believe you can pass this test. They believe in the competencies of them, and they believe in, and the third thing is that they have compassionate consequences. Now, there are some toxic coaches out there, just as they're toxic instructors or teachers. They believe in consequences. But real coaches who know how to motivate you to do what you don't want to do, is they have the ability to give you compassionate consequences. Here's what I found out. Too much compassion makes an individual soft and weak, even in parenting. If all you do is reward a child with ice cream and lollipops and cookies, sooner or later you won't have enough ice cream, lollipops, and cookies. But you do have to have compassion. If you give me someone who only has consequences, then you turn a student, an individual, into someone who's harmful, they regret being in your space. They're bitter. But when you have the healthy blend of compassion and consequences, oh man, that teacher right there, that coach right there, that parent right there, now that child will go to bat for you. They'll go to war for you because they know you love them.
Mm.
And then lastly, not only does a coach know how to capture hearts, not only does a coach believe in the competencies of the students, not only do they have compassionate consequences, but they build or what I call a culture of community. That classroom that teacher is in, when the student walks in that room, it's a community. I'm just not in math class. I'm in my math community where there's great crosstalk in the room. A quiet classroom oftentimes concerns me. If it's too quiet,
Mhm.
if the main goal is to keep a serene atmosphere where no one makes any noise, oftentimes that concerns me. But when you have a culture of community, there's dialogue, there's conversation, there's movement.
Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. Everyone talks about the power of data-driven instruction, but what does that actually look like? Look no further than iExcel, the ultimate online learning and teaching platform for K-12. iExcel gives you meaningful insights that drive real progress, and research can prove it. Studies in nearly all 50 states show that schools that use iExcel outperform other schools on state tests. Educators who use iExcel love that they can easily see how their school is performing in real time to make better instructional decisions. And iExcel doesn't stop at just data. iExcel also brings an entire ecosystem of resources for your teachers with a complete curriculum, personalized learning plans, and so much more. It's no wonder that iExcel is used in 95 of the top 100 school districts. Ready to join them? Visit iexcel.com/PM to get started. Hi, friends. Did you know that Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, has been downloaded over 1.5 million times? We are so proud to share conversations, interviews, and resources to support leaders like you who are serving school communities worldwide. And I'd like to invite you to explore our books, our professional development offerings, our Grow Academies, our masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations, because we're here to help you and your teams build schools that you're proud to call home. So here's my question. How are you planning to keep growing in the semester ahead? We're booking events right now for the next 2 years, and we would love to serve you in person or virtually. So visit williamdparker.com and click services, or email me at will@williamdparker.com to connect. I would love to hear from you. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of today's show.
You're listening to Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast.
What I love about those 4 factors is there's going to be a guest coming on the show, and because I'm not looking at my guest list, I don't remember if he is before or after we've had this conversation. So I believe he's probably already been listened to by my audience by the time this one comes out, Coach Carlos. But David Yeager has a new book called 10 to 25, the Science of Motivating Young People. And he's a professor at the University of Texas in Austin. And what's so cool about his book is that he and his team have actually done research showing the evidence of exactly what you just said.
Wow.
Just showing the evidence of what happens in classroom settings when you have someone who's on the pendulum side of compassion, and how students don't respect them because they don't have high standards, or they're on this other side of the pendulum with high consequences and enforcers, but no compassion. But what happens when you find that sweet spot? And so all 4 of those things: capturing their hearts, believing in their competencies, having compassionate consequences, and a culture of community. By the way, your alliteration is amazing. And so I love all of that. Any other thoughts on that before I ask you your next question?
No, that's it.
So you also talk about, and you talk about this in more than one context, but you talk about finding your high why. And so tell us why that's such an important concept for not just students, but also for educators.
Yeah, we're now in a space in our country where the stress levels are high in just about every industry. I'm not even sure right now, William, whether clowns are happy. I mean, we're just in a place of high stress everywhere. And particularly in education, because we're short-staffed. The demands on leaders and teachers are very high. Parents are, it's just a very frustrating environment. So stress just comes along with the industry that we've chosen. But stress doesn't have to be an evil thing. What we know from the research is that there's another name for stress, or another type of stress, that's called eustress. Eustress is a good thing, and you want eustress, the right amount of eustress. So stress in and of itself is not a bad thing. So you add to that having a culture that is propelled with a why, with a purpose, students coming into classroom with the purpose, teachers coming to the classroom with the purpose, everyone walking around with a purpose. Now, where it becomes interesting is where that happy meeting of stress and eustress is, that interesting boiling point. That's what I call a high why. When a teacher has just enough stress to keep her motivated, to keep him motivated, where the student has just enough stress to keep them motivated. Because again, too much stress will break you down.
I love that.
But the right amount of stress, not enough stress, will have you too complacent, will have you too lethargic. But the right amount of stress, if you can dial it up just right, where there's a little bit of stress, a little bit of eustress, oh, now we're cooking. And that's what I call the high why.
What I love about that is, so often, especially when I'm talking to other educators in our profession, and leaders in particular, um, there's everyone, it doesn't matter what their positions are, but they're always dealing with some kind of tension or friction, or anxiety. And so sometimes when I hear this question, when people ask me, how do I maintain balance or how do I not burn out? What I'm hearing in that question sometimes is, where do I find peace, which is important that you live in peace. But sometimes what I hear in that question is, how do I get to a place where I'm absent from all this conflict? And the answer to that question is never.
Right.
Or if you do, you're in danger. Because if you ever, so what I love about what you're saying is that tension, that friction, that pressure, I mean, there's no way to ride a bike without that kind of tension.
No.
And so I love that because you're right. Everyone needs that high why, that thing that's propelling them on, and also it builds resilience. Whenever when you're stepping into those moments too. Now, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about your work with boys, but I also know you're a storyteller, Coach Carlos. So I just give us an opportunity to step into some of the work that you've been able to do in the schools where you've been, or in the school that you led with the Male Leadership Academy or the Future Man Success Prep. Talk about why your work with boys has been so important, and then give us some feedback on how you've seen that influencing and helping the lives of young men.
I've always, just because I'm male, I've had an affinity, for young men. Growing up with a father in my life, but a father who was often drawn away for long hours for work, I did not have the type of figure in my life that I wanted. I didn't have all those days to play in the park and to go on the trips. He was there, he was a provider, but work pulled him away so often. So I've always had an affinity, towards helping out young men. And then of course, because I'm male, there's just a natural connection. I say that because what came across my my desk was this report on just how bad boys and men were doing, not only in my city, not only in my state, not only in my country, but around the world, William. Men are taking it on the chin. And this is not, because I know you have listeners who are male and female. When you hear men talk about their unique issues, this is not to put a lampshade over what women are dealing with at all. It's just to highlight what men are uniquely dealing with. But when it came across my desk that boys and men were struggling, simultaneously, I got an offer to lead a male leadership academy, and it was the best 3 years of my life. Maybe the birth of my son and a couple of things, I won't say that, but it was a great 3 years. that Male Leadership Academy helped me just as much as it helped the boys, where we were able to take boys who could not succeed anywhere else. I was in a throwaway school. I mean, when you got to the Male Leadership Academy, it was because you couldn't make it anywhere else. But then by the time you left us, you didn't want to go anywhere else, because we created a culture of performance and expectation that worked. So out of that, we just codified our systems and built Future Men Success Prep that we now work with. We work with schools who are in need of a tier 2 solution.
So walk us into that setting, Coach Carlos, because what I appreciated about your book was you believe, and I think you've showed this in both research and practice, that educators need to adapt a different mindset when it comes to how to motivate and engage boys. Talk about what you've learned in that work.
So I've distilled it down to just one acronym. It's called the MAC attack, MAC. And what I share with teachers, if you want to really get your boys engaged, if you want to engage young men, then you've got to have, in some variation, these 3 strategies. When you're building your lesson plan, I'm asking teachers to ask themselves whether these strategies exist. And it's real simple: movement, activity, and competition. If you have a variation of all those 3, then you are going to engage your boys at another level. You engage your girls too, but what we know now from PET scans and CAT scans is that the male brain operates differently. We're different by design. Doesn't mean that we're better, doesn't mean that we're worse, but it does mean that the male brain is different. And because of that, you have to come at it differently. Movement is what boys need. And they need it as often and as in a controlled, healthy environment as you can give it. But if you're not a classroom coach, don't play around with movement, because it'll come back and bite you in the butt. You've got to be a classroom coach in order to infuse movement into your classroom. If you want to infuse activities in it, you've got to be a classroom coach. You've got to have that command of the classroom. And then competition. It's funny how much pushback I got even from my publisher when I wanted to write about competition. Now, I had to prove that it made sense, but initially, it's like, I don't know if you want to talk about competition. But competition is something that life is all about. Why not teach students how to compete in a controlled, healthy environment? So what I say to teachers is, if you want a strategy that you can implement tomorrow without getting budget approval, without waiting till next month, you can implement the MAC attack tomorrow. And that's just movement, activity, and competition. And it's a game changer.
It is. And what I love about that is you are calling everyone to think about learning from the perspective of the learner.
Yeah.
And if we put ourselves back in those shoes, and I had the opportunity to sit in a quiet, thoughtful environment, which is, sometimes it's helpful, but sometimes it's helpful within that quiet, thoughtful environment to also get up and move around and engage with other people, or have something hands-on that I can do that supports and reinforces what I'm learning. And then I was a classroom teacher for 11 years before I was a principal, Coach Carlos. So I know how fun and effective it is to put kids in teams. And before you're going to do an assessment, let's practice what we've learned, and let's do it in a way where I'm not handing out a big prize or something, but there's just the bragging rights that this group got more answers right than the other group. And I have seen classes explode with energy in those moments. And so it's true. It's such good teaching. Well, as we wrap up this conversation, I first of all just want to say thank you for the legacy that you have built in education as a former teacher and coach and school administrator, and the work that you've been doing as a content provider, as an author, as a coach for other educators. I want listeners to be able to connect with you. And so if you don't mind, as we wrap up, I want you to think about, if you were able to sit down with coffee for a few minutes with a leader who may be stepping into a new situation, or maybe there's a new path in their journey, what's a parting word of advice that you would give that leader to just hold in mind? And then how can our listeners stay connected with you?
Staying connected to me is easy. carlosjohnson.org. You can go right there. The one thing that I encourage leaders and teachers, and if your listeners want to take anything away from this conversation that they can implement tomorrow, and that is, I know education is what we do, but really relationship building is what we do. And education is what comes out of it. Create a culture of relationships. And what I talk about in the book is that right there is that eraser that you called it, or that chiclet, that one domino that starts everything falling, is relationships. The beginning of the school year, give it a week before you get into the X's and the O's. Get to know kids, get to know what they're thinking, where they're coming from, if dad's in the home, if mom's in the home, as much as you can, get to know them. The good thing about it is you can extract some great lessons from just knowing them and weave it right into the lessons. Hip hop was one of my greatest tools. You don't have to use gangster hip hop. You can use hip hop and kids will love you and they'll love your classroom by using hip hop. So again, carlosjohnson.org. You can reach me from there, or imageofsuccess.com, IMAGE of success.com. And then build a culture of healthy relationships and you'll win the day.
Well, the book is Power Engaged, 7 Power Moves for Building Strong Relationships to Increase Engagement with Students and Parents. And we will put Coach Carlos's contact information in the show notes. But I just want to say to listeners, if you grab a copy of this book, you're going to find throughout it, it's just chock full of resources, questionnaires, things you could do with students, assessments that you could do for yourself. So thank you, Coach Carlos, for not just the wonderful work that you've done in influencing and increasing student engagement throughout schools, but also for providing your wisdom in a resource for other people that they can use in their schools too. So thank you for your wonderful work. Principal Matters listeners, thank you for doing what matters, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Principal Matters.